Lodging Michael there, you're very welcome to our humble podcast. We hope you've had an exciting weekend, and that the coming week is just packed with even more
Yeah.
excitement to the point where you're dizzy. Will you join me?
Yeah,
Join me in that sentiment,
absolutely.
Pat?
By the way, do your wee plug for the subscriber thing.
Oh, forgot. Yes, at the bottom of your screens. Now, don't allow anybody to distract you. If the wife offers you a cup of tea or the husband offers you a cup of tea, just say, no, I must do this first. At the bottom of the screen, there's a little thing saying subscribe. Click on it. And that way, you'll be sure immediately of knowing when Pat and I have made a new podcast. Imagine that. And I was talking about your week being dizzy with delight. It'll be overflowing with delight now. Okay.
God,
right.
Jesus.
How
if your life
today?
is so poor, you're depending on us. God bless you.
Don't talk yourself down, Pat. Come on. I mean, I know you're not much, but I'm terrific. Okay, listen, we're laughing, but we shouldn't be laughing because there's a lot of serious stuff happening in the world, and it does bear
absolutely
thought. And the one that most people's minds, I think, today would be, as usual, Israel. Now, for once, I thought there was optimistic news coming out of Israel, and then I thought about it, I'm not so sure. There were huge demonstrations. I think you saw them on the TV last night. Huge numbers, all in the center of Tel Aviv, or maybe it was Jerusalem. And today, I gather there's a general one-day strike. And all of this is about the outrage at the hostage's death and the fact that Netanyahu hasn't got the other ones or done a deal to get the other ones out. Would that be a fair summary of it, Pat?
I think so, Jude. I think was it Saturday, 6 hostages were found dead. The Israelis claimed they were executed. The Hamas claims that they died in an Israeli airstrike or whatever.
But anyway, the Israelis claimed that they were shot in the head. But you see, that if they were shot in the head, the assumption would be that was Hamas done that. If they were killed other ways, the assumption might be that they were, as you say.
Exactly. But anyway, apparently there was up to 500,000 on the streets of Tel Aviv last night in protest. There's a one-day strike today. The Ben Gurion airport apparently shut down, and there's a possibility of this strike continuing on until tomorrow. Now, the thing about it, there was 3 policemen shot dead on the West Bank on Saturday. They were shot dead by militants, as the Israeli call them, and so on. But there's been about 200 people, I think, at least, shot dead in the West Bank. By the way, in case anybody's confused, the West Bank and Gaza are not the same. There's supposed to be no Hamas in Gaza and all this sort of, and the West Bank, but the Israelis have been raiding all the cities there, and there's about 3 million people, I think, live on the West Bank, and there's been at least 200 deaths in the recent months. That's a very high death toll for a place that's supposed to be no militants or relatively quiet. Put it like that.
So how are you matching this up with the demonstrations? These people have been killed, but there's these demonstrations. What are you saying?
I think basically at this stage, a lot of the Americans, a lot of the Israelis, and all the rest are saying Netanyahu is prolonging this deal or this ceasefire negotiation to save his own skin. That he's hoping for some sort of. He is facing serious charges himself in regard to corruption. The October 7th exposed the so-called he was the prime minister, was supposed to keep them all safe, and so on. And there's also the Americans are fed up with him. They say that he's putting in conditions to the negotiations that he knows Hamas won't sign up to, and that he's basically it's all a political ploy, keep him in office for as long, and he's hoping that things will wear out. But I think it's going the opposite direction, dude. I think apparently the Americans are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are meeting with the American negotiating team today, and according to RT earlier this morning, they said the reports are that it's going to be a take it or leave it deal being offered to Netanyahu. I hope
let's hope so. Let's hope so. I must say, I when I saw the demonstrations, the 500,000 people on the streets, it really was an impressive sight on the TV screen. And then they spoke to a young guy, and he was passionate. He said, I saw Netanyahu won't do this. We'll do it. We'll go in and do it. Which actually doesn't make sense, because I don't think he would get
it. But there's apparently 97 hostages still unaccounted for. Now, whether they're dead or whether they're alive. But you know, the thought occurred to me, war is a dirty business. Now, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Hamas did execute those six, on a very simple basis. The Israelis have been killing them right, left, and centre. And I presume, and as I keep saying, I'm not justifying it or sort of trying to, but I could see why they would do it on the basis, like, you're killing our people, here's a message for you.
That's right. That's right. In fact, I mean, if they did kill them, that was 6 of the hostages they killed, and put that against 41,000 of their people killed.
That's the hatred and the revenge is there, and you can see why they would do it. And there's also, what's that? They're sending a message to Netanyahu: if you're doing it to our people, we can do it to yours.
Yeah. I must say, my heart was cheered when I saw those huge crowds on the streets, and I heard that young guy speaking so passionately about the need to get the hostages back and do a deal. But I then thought for a minute, and I said, what's that passion about? What are those demonstrations about? What's this strike about? And this strike is about the hostages. Getting the hostages back safely. No question of a demonstration about the 41,000 people who have been killed in Palestine.
The barbarism of Israeli, really, not at all.
In some ways, you can look at it as optimistic and good, because it might shift Netanyahu, whether he likes it or not. But in another way, it's very depressing, because they're essentially saying our people, small in number comparatively, we're very worried about them. They're human beings. And then the rest, well, you know, they're Palestinians. Essentially, they're treating the Palestinians as being not counting. Don't count.
Subhuman. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that, Jude. And I think you're right. You know, when you see so many out in the street, Jude, it's all about the hostages. It's not about stop the war, stop the killing, stop the barbarism, stop the genocide. Not at all. It's all about getting our people back.
Mind you, there are some Israelis, but they're
there are, but
who are against the war.
In a time of war, you know, the pacifist is the man of courage, not the boy goes to fight.
That's for sure.
Hey, by the way, change the subject totally, and it's only what came into my head. There was a story on, and I'm sorry about doing this on you, but there was a story this morning. I thought it was, you know, RT. There's a beluga whale. It was found dead and off the coast of Norway, and it's I wrote it down because I said I'll never remember. Havaldemar. Havald is the Norwegian word for whale, and Vladimir is the Russian, or the first name of the Russian president. Apparently, this whale, they reckon it was a Russian spy. They found it a couple of years back with a harness on it where they could put a camera on it, and apparently it's gone in and out of Norwegian waters. But the thing about it, they said the whale responded to human commands. How's about that for a unique?
So they've been saying things like a little bit to the left, whale. No, to the right now. Zoom in for a close-up. Right?
Talk about Russian ingenuity, Jude.
I think those people were having too much fun at the weekend before they wrote about that.
But anyway, the whale was apparently all right on Friday, but was found dead, I think, yesterday. And they think it might have been, I think the suspicion is the Russians might have killed it because the game was up.
Well, if it was called Vladimir, then Vladimir Putin may have done the job himself.
Absolutely.
Taking it as an affront.
Anyway, sorry for throwing that.
Well, it's a good story. It's a new way of looking at technology. Strap it to a fish. Okay, let's go on and look at it. What might be seen as sort of a frivolous thing, but I think it's a very core idea. And that is, there's a lot of banning of books going on in the States at present, particularly in the state of Florida. Don't ask me why, except that I know George Bush's brother was a top man there. But Ron DeSantis isn't he the governor of is it Florida? And he says you have some groups that want to take away classic books like To Kill a Mockingbird, but they want things like Gender Queer, a memoir, which is a cartoon-style book with graphic images of children performing sexual acts. That's wrong. They want to eliminate Of Mice and Men, but Lawn Boy, a book containing explicit passages of pedophilia, is somehow accepted. So, what are your own thoughts? What's your instinct whenever you hear that the schools are having books removed from their shelves in Florida, which incidentally, Florida accounts for 72% of all of the state's states the books being removed from their library. That's a pretty high total. Ron DeSanctimonious might be a right name for him. So what do you think? Would you be in favour of
I'm not in favour of books on paedophilia being handed to young people, nor am I in favour of sexualized books being handed to children. Far from it. You know, I think there's a time and a place. Like when somebody reaches a certain age, right, that's up their choice. But here's where I cross the line big time. If they're going to ban To Kill a Mockingbird and most of John Steinbeck's books for political ideology reasons, you know, because they don't fit the sort of right-wing Christian or whatever, Christian hypocrites, as I call them, stuff. See, what is Judaism? Florida, basically the retirement home of America, and it's all these old conservatives who have moved there. I think it's been Republican for so long, and you know, and all these old guys want these books banned and all the rest of it. They hate what they call this woke generation. But Jude, here's the thing. They reckon Steinbeck, because he said he was a socialist, and he was basically fomenting subversion against the American way of life and all that, because he exposed the capitalist system for what it was. He was big on the rights of migrant workers and about how they were treated and all the rest of it and so on. And it's basically the growth of the fascism in America, the growth of the right wing, of the growth of extreme capitalism. That's under Trump. That's really this is all new.
I wonder, Pat, it's a very interesting thing that I accept totally what you say. I'd be opposed to having books available about pedophilia or the sort of stuff that he talked about, cartoon styles book with graphic images of children performing sexual acts. I'd be against that. And I would also be horrified if they took away To Kill a Mockingbird or of Mice and Men or Grapes of Wrath or anything like that. Here's one, though. Supposing you had a guy who wrote a book, or a woman who wrote a book in English about set in Russia, modern Russia, and it was a love story, and it talked about in a positive way about life in Russia. Would you be in favour of having that on the bookshelves of the schools?
Absolutely. Why not? Let people make up their own minds. I don't see anything wrong about that. Would
not fall into the same category? These are tender young minds that can't handle the sexual stuff.
See if somebody wrote a legitimate book that, To Kill a Mockingbird is considered a classic. It won the Pulitzer Prize. And basically, it's the story of how racism and how a black man was going to be hanged or executed for something he didn't do. And it was about a white lawyer against these own people, started to expose the racism that was inherent in the whole idea. And it's seen through as a gem, or what do you call the name of the wee girl? I can't remember. She sees it.
Scout.
Not Gem. What?
Scout.
And Gem was her brother, wasn't he?
I can't remember, yeah.
I think it was. And anyway, it tells a story through the eyes of the child, and they watch their father and all the rest, and their father becomes their hero. That the new right wing, so they don't even want some of these people don't want teaching about what this whole thing about slavery. They said that it's that basically it's polluting the white people, that they and all this sort of crap. Dude, the bottom line of it, if it's legitimate literature that tells a story, I am all in favor of it. Let the people then make up their own mind. If it's outright propaganda, but you remember what he called it? Jeepers, can't even remember the name of the woman. She was a real right-wing woman. She wrote books in the 1950s. It'll come to me eventually. She wrote capitalist propaganda. But I read one of her books. Jesus, dude, I'm really annoyed. I can't remember her name. She was quite famous in the 1950s and 60s. But then we go ahead. By the way, hold on. There's a question on what do you call it? Countdown or one of those the other day. Enid Blyton, who was the, I always thought Enid Blyton was this sort of middle-aged, nice woman who supported nude tennis. Enid Blyton.
My God, I'm amazed. I wonder what the famous five will think of that.
So apparently she was quite well, no, I'll not say what she was. Anyway, go ahead, Dr. Collins.
You can have. She might have written a book somewhere. It might surface. The famous five play tennis.
And the nude.
Anyway, final point on this thing of censorship. George Bernard Shaw said that assassination is the ultimate form of censorship. And he has a point, you know. That's the way to really control people, kill them. I mean, we see that in Gaza every single day.
Yeah.
But I would go along with what you're saying. I just think you might find, or people might find, that the decision to ban or not to ban might be tricky if it appeared to paint the enemy, the people they're opposed to. Did you say Israel or maybe to Russia? If they were painted in a background colors that made them seem quite nice. Anyway, it's a very interesting subject, the whole thing about censorship. I think, actually, having taught English, I think the problem is to get them reading anything.
Yeah, Jude,
Even it was
look at Russia, Dr. Zhivago, Anna Karenina, but War and Peace and all the rest. No, would we ban them too because they're about Russia?
That was before the USSR and before Putin.
Yeah, I know, but still.
Okay, let's move on to contemporary matters in our own sainted isle. I am astonished, Pat. You sent me figures about the last poll, and Sinn Féin are down 1, and they're at 18%. And Fine Gael is 25, and Fianna Fáil is 21. My God! So it really does look like Sinn Féin is tanking.
Yeah, Jude, we've discussed this before. That by the way, that was a Sunday Independent. It was a Red Sea. I don't remember. Sunday Independent yesterday. That's basically it. Sinn Féin in October 2022. Dr. Collins, Sinn Féin were, as far as I recall, 36%. I need to look it up, but I didn't bother. I was too lazy to look it up.
High, very high. Yes,
I was 36% in October 2022, and they're now down. In other words, they've dropped by half, so they're at 18 now. We have discussed this before, but I think there's a couple of things. They were less than sure-footed in this whole immigration thing, and that's caused them a lot of votes down south. They're also I remember we have said it before about the whole thing about Mary Lou had to go with both the rioters and the cops, and after the Dublin riots and toward back end of last year, which I didn't think played well. And the other thing as well, the housing issue seems to have gone off the boil a bit as well, and that was Sinn Féin's strong suit for a long time. But the other side of the story, Jude, towards the final, the economic figures for the Republic this last year have been tremendous, and the government, I'd say a lot of people who might have been, iffy, were saying, hey, look, wait a minute, we mightn't agree totally ideologically with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or whatever, but hey, things are improving. Their money's getting spent. The housing situation is improving. The government are coming out week after week saying we're building 50,000 houses and we're doing this and we're doing that. And maybe people just don't want to change that.
Well, as it happens, last night on RTE, they said that today, Sinn Féin would be coming out with details of their housing policy, and they are going to. Their plans are to ditch some big organisation that controls the use of land. It'll be interesting because one of the criticisms of Sinn Féin was that they were, complaining about the government but not offering their own ideas. I think that Sinn Féin have probably figured there's an election coming up in November, which most people are saying in the South now. And they figure if they get in with a credible housing plan that people would buy into, that could change everything. To be honest, I haven't heard as much about immigrants recently, not on the RT news anyway, but I have heard about housing, and it really does seem to have stuck in people's gullet. So my guess is that if Sinn Féin were capable of convincing the electorate that their plan really would make a difference and make a difference fast, then I think they might opt for it. Their popularity might surge a bit. Do you think?
Yeah. Well, there's the other thing as well, Jude, is Simon Hart. Varadkar was an easy target, for a lot of the right-wing stuff. Harris isn't as handy. Harris, since he hit the ground running as the Taoiseach, he's crisscrossed the country, and he's coming across rightly or wrongly. I think he lacks gravitas, but who am I to say? He seems to be striking.
I think you're Pat McGart.
But anyway, he seems to be striking a chord with the people. That's the first thing.
He does.
Yeah, and so on. Like even the last day, which I had got to give him, he said he's asked the Attorney General to have a look at our trade with Israel. Now, trade is a EU function, and we don't have apparently under EU law we have to abide by EU rules rather than Irish rules. But he's saying he's looking for an opt-out if Ireland can do something unilaterally. Dude, that struck a chord with a lot of people. The other thing as well, Harris is a pragmatic guy. He doesn't seem to have a wild lot of ideology. He's a centrist. And I might even be a wee bit left of centre, whereas Varadkar was pretty much right of centre. And, let's get this under the elephant in the room as well, Jude. Varadkar, he was an easy target for the bigots on the right wing. His parents, or one of his parents, was Indian. He was gay, and a lot of things that that sort of bigoted, racist crowd, Harris, they can't, they let on, by the way, a lot of them, if you read some of the stuff on social media, these people, they let on it was all to do with these policies. Not at all, Jude. I think a lot of it was on the basis that he was both Indian heritage and that he was gay. A lot of these, and in fact, I'm 98% certain of it, that was a lot of the antagonism towards him.
Well, I'm going to do tell you my view on the two people, and it sort of conflicts with what I know I should be saying or being concerned with. I'm looking at the personalities of the two people, of Leo Varadkar and Simon Harris, and frankly, I don't Nell McCafferty. I heard Nell McCafferty the weekend, and somebody asked her about being gay, which she was. And she said, I'm essentially, she said on this recording, she said, I'm tired listening to people saying gay rights and gay rights. If you're gay, and that's it. And I tend to agree with that. And I think any harping on the question of Leo's gayness or gaiety is beside the point. I found him a reasonably, not wildly, but a reasonably attractive figure. He had a degree of gravitas. He was pleasant. I never seen him losing his temper or snarling at anybody. I hate to say it, but I'm prejudiced against Simon Harris. I find him a very hard. Anytime he comes on the screen, I find my hackles are rising. It's irrational, but that's how I feel. And I'm amazed that so many people appear to have bought into and are very happy with, and maybe they're being more sensible than I am, and are concentrating on his policies. Are you moved by his personality, or do you think he's got a personality?
No, I still think he's like an overgrown schoolboy. It's been let out early. I really genuinely do. And the other thing, you're dead right. Varadkar and Simon Coveney had gravitas, and during that Brexit, that really sort of period where everything was up in the air, I thought they handled Ireland brilliantly. The good ship Ireland, they steered that ship brilliantly, and they kept Europe on our side the whole way through. And see, I remember Michael Noonan and Enda Kenny were doormats, absolute doormats during the financial crisis. Anybody could tell them what to do and when to do it. Coveney and Varadkar, Jude, they told the British where to get off. They were very, very strong, and I admired them tremendously for the way they handled that Brexit thing. And Ireland came out of that much stronger than a lot of people. Like, we were supposed to get hit economically, and we're supposed to get hit every which way. Jude, we're fair but into Brexit now, and Ireland is doing very, very well.
Well, Leo, I was at, you're at too, that Ireland's Future event. And Leo Varadkar was at it, and he said that what the government in the South and people generally would need to sit down and start planning for what a new Ireland would look like. I haven't heard Harris say a word on the future.
Not at all. You see, did you use that term there, gravitas? I thought Varadkar, no matter what you said about him, had that gravitas. And when he went abroad, he had that gravitas. So had Coveney. And yet Harris, I don't know, I stood up, I'm going to repeat myself, but he just doesn't have it. He looks like, even his voice is that whiny, tinny voice, and, and so on. Now, I could be very unfair to the man, because everybody says he's very good, and Jude, I admire some of the things he's done so far. But, you can't, what is this? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, maybe we should lay off per Simon. After all, he's saddled with the surname of Harris.
The greatest of all time. Who knows?
Okay, let's go and look at the popularity of one Donald. What's his second name? What's his middle name?
Donald J. Trump.
J. Trump. J is for what? John, is it?
John, I think, Donald John Trump, as far as I remember.
Donald John Trump. Apparently, Anthony Scaramucci. What a name!
Yeah.
What a name! I'd give my life for a name like that.
You know,
Scaramucci.
Jude, isn't that song? What do you call it in Queen? Scaramucci.
Yes. Will you do the fandango?
Fandango.
Anyway, Scaramucci is saying that he's only met one person who hates Trump more than he hates Trump. I think he'd want to get out more. Is Trump's wife, Melania. I mean, what's your view on this? Is this reasonable sort of talk to be at?
You see, the reason I threw that, I thought it was quite funny. I read that this morning. And apparently the only person that hates Trump more than Scaramucci hates him, as far as I know. But he says the person who hits him a lot more is Melania. And apparently she will not move to the White House if Trump wins in November. She's not moving. But the other thing, the person, and I read the book, I can't remember who's, I think it's, I know what do you call the boys that wrote All the President's Men. And it doesn't matter. Jeez, I'm having a bad morning. Yeah.
Carol, somebody.
Carol, Jesus. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It'll come to me later on as well. But anyway, the bottom line, in his book, he starts at, General Mark Miley remember during the sort of the attack on the Capitol Hill. Yes. General Mark Miley got so nervous about the Constitution and about what was happening in America that he rang the Chinese and the Russians to say there was no revolution in America and so on. And he just trusted Trump so much, and he hated him so much that he thought he was basically a traitor and so on. And Scaramucci says General Mark Miley was the chief of staff of the armed forces. So this is how serious this stuff is. Apparently, Scaramucci claims the only person that hates Trump more than that, or more than Melania, is Mark Miley.
Well, I think, I see the point he's trying to make, but, I think he's underestimating the amount of general hatred that Trump generates. We were talking about the response you get when you see the image of somebody. Jeez, I mean, you only have to look at Donald Trump strutting across the stage once, and that's it, as far as I'm concerned. How in the name of God his mother even loved him, I don't know. She should...
I know he came out with a brilliant one at the weekend as well. The arrogance of the man, the narcissistic, he says, October 7th wouldn't have happened had he been president. Like, how and under Jesus would he have stopped the Hamas coming out of the tunnels and all the rest on October 7th? But that is almost as if, and he said he could stop the Russian-Ukraine war with a phone call. It's like, talk about delusional.
But Pat, when he was in power last, didn't he? He started off by comparing the size of his rocket with the size of the rocket of the North Korean leader. But then he ended up doing this sort of embrace, metaphorically speaking, by visiting North Korea, and everybody was... So he didn't actually provoke any crisis there. And as his supporters would say, there was no wars, no major wars going on. He says he pulled out of the Ukraine.
This is, I hear that, he didn't start any wars. Jude, he cozied up to Vladimir Putin big time. He told Europe to go bollocks itself. He cozied up to Kim Jong-un. He cozied up to dictators, and what do you call the guy in Saudi Arabia who murdered the journalist? He gave him cover. That he's sending out all the wrong messages. In other words, he cozied up to America's old enemies and actually cold shoulder traditional allies. Well, he had a real go at quite a few countries.
Yeah. Well, the thing of cozying up to old enemies, I mean, think back to the time of Richard Nixon. Nixon in his second term went to China. I remember the ping pong diplomacy. Yeah. He opened up, friendlier relationships with China, which had been the object of hatred from the States. So in that sense, Nixon did a favor. It was an act of patriotism, really. Could you not say the same thing about Trump if he were president? Actually, I don't think he's open hell.
No, by the way, China has never invaded anywhere else. Russia has invaded right, left, and center. Kim Jong-un, there's he beheaded one of
Pat. Russia hasn't invaded right, left, and center. They did certainly when they were the USSR, but the amount of invading they've done is pretty damn limited. It's limited to.
Well, they've done Ukraine. They went into what do you call the other place? A couple of about 10 years ago. There's someone, and they have. And they've got the guy in Belarus. That's just he's sitting there. Putin's looking after him, and so on. Now, I'm not. I can understand some of what the Russians are. They're protecting their interests, of course they are. Yeah. But so on. But having said that, Jude, I think Trump was the village idiot's village idiot. And by the way, the other thing as well, I wonder is he a bit of a spent force? When he came out first, he was so different. Yeah. Is he repeating the same old tired old message? Has everybody said now, well, okay, we've got the stick now, Donald, we know what you're standing for, and it's lost its appeal?
Yes, I think you put your finger on something very important. I get that feeling, that people are weary of this guy, that he really is going on. He's talking crap most of the time. And his aides are saying, for God's sake, talk about policy. And then he'd start for about 5 minutes reluctantly talking about policy in a disjointed way. And then he'd go off rambling and giving out about people. I think maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think his day is done. I really do.
I think
I've seen people who are predicting a blue wave. The Democratic Party.
Because at least you keep saying that your man Waltz, or is that his name? He is something different, and so is Kamala Harris.
Oh yeah.
I think a black, or well, I don't know what, is she Indian or black? I'm never sure. Married to a white man, first woman, something different. Waltz, who seems a former high school coach, governor, he seems honest and reasonably decent. Now, I'm sure they will corporate this. America will get around them, and they won't change too many policies. They'll just follow Joe Biden's policies and so on. But at least, somebody said to me one day, they're all the same. No, they're not. Donald Trump is considerably worse.
Yeah, that's for sure. And in fact, you could add to that list you've mentioned of people close to Kamala Harris, people like Joyce Shapiro and who was it? Pete Buttigieg. I watched an interview with Pete Buttigieg, and he's a one sharp cookie. He really is one sharp cookie. And his way of talking, he has done, I would say he has done more to get people to think in a more tolerant way of gay marriage than any amount of demonstrations have done.
Yeah, Jude, if he had he not been gay, I would think he would have been probably the president, because he's the best politician in America.
Well, if Ireland, if the south of Ireland kidnap a gay Taoiseach, I don't think it's beyond the bounds of possibility.
Jesus, Jude, the rise of that the so-called Christian right, who are far from Christian, in America, is unbelievable.
Well, but maybe their day is done, as with Donald Trump. Okay, let's finally talk very briefly about, here's a choice. You can talk about Kneecap, or you can talk about Man U. Which of the two would you like to talk about?
Let's go for Kneecap, Jude, because
Kneecap. Very interesting.
You're the expert here in this one.
I'm not an expert at all, but I've watched videos of them, and my God, I just love them. I love... They do rap, right? And they do it in Irish and in English. Much of it's Irish, but the occasional things of English. They are terribly irreverent. They're quite rude as well. So there's two qualities that I like about them. And an amazing thing is they seem to have had unbelievable success. And I just hope that keeps going, because, it's the way they use the Irish language is the exact opposite of the way that many people think about the Irish language being used. That is, people who are opposed to Irish language, and you say, how old-fashioned rubbish, These guys are not old-fashioned. Whatever else you might say about them, they are far from old-fashioned. And the names they've given themselves, DJ Profi.
Even the name Kneecap. But here's the thing, right? You're in the occupied territories, not me, right? Here's the thing. You go to Irish language classes, I saw this morning, the reason I threw it at you was, by the way, I saw Jamie Bryson saying this is exposes what the Irish language is all about and so on, about Kneecap and so on, right? What is it with the unionist population in regard to the Irish language? What? No, I wanted you to explain it to me so that everybody, all our viewers, can get what it's all about.
I think there's two reasons, at least. I'm sure there's others as well. But one is an economic reason. They would say all this money for street signs and for have everything in English and in Irish, every document coming out of Stormont, that's extra money and it could be used better. That's a case that can be made. You know, you could make that case. I'd say there's a lot of nationalists who might say the same thing, because most people, including most nationalists, don't give a damn about the Irish language, and they certainly don't speak it. So I grant them that. The thing I wouldn't grant them is the other reason they're opposed to it, and that is they hate, maybe I'm being harsh on them, but they have some contempt for the native culture. And that is so typical of colonialists or people who are planted here, that you go in and what you're bringing is so superior to what these pathetic natives have that let's get rid of that old rubbish, that mumbo jumbo, dancing around the fire stuff. Forget it. Get with it. We are the people. This is the empire. So that might sound exaggerated, but I'm sure that's the kind of thinking the likes of Jim Allister and Jimmy Bryson go for. They may not express it, but that's what it's about.
No, not unbelievable. I keep looking at the unionists, and their reaction to the Irish language is it's almost visceral. It's not any way intellectualized, or it's not any way sort of explained away. It's just, it's the Irish language, and that's the language of the natives, and we're not going to support it, and so on. And I'm going, Jesus, wait a minute. If you travel through the Highlands of Scotland, you'll see the Gaelic language all over the place.
And Wales as well.
Yeah.
Pat, our time is up. Okay, I forgot a book last week. So I'm now saying Carson McCullers' book, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter.
Yeah.
Wonderful book. Pat, don't do anything too exciting this week now.
No.
Your blood pressure, okay?
Absolutely. Good luck, Jim.